Hey, this is Madalyn
and Suze Cooper, and you're listening to All Things Audio.
Let's get started with a tweet this week from Super Follows. That's the subscriber. It's kind of like a Patreon where you can have your community pay, I think like $5, $10. You can pick an amount and you can send curated content just to your members. And we know that recently, I believe it was in May, it was announced that they were going to allow those that were using the Super Follows to have spaces, like private spaces for the community. But apparently it was iOS only, because the tweet that came out this week said creators on Android can now host super follower only spaces. And then in the second paragraph, they do mention that you can now record them. I have the ability to do super follows, but I never did venture into it because I'm actually planning to relaunch my Patreon. So I haven't really tried this out, but I'm really excited that they do have the ability for you to host private spaces for your community if you're using super follows, and that now it's available whether you're on iOS or Android. I remember signing up. It was that whole monetization thing, which, all you guys have to do is just go on to the mobile app, and in your sidebar menu, you'll see a section for monetization, and it'll let you know if you can apply. If maybe you applied in the past, it'll let you know the status. And then if you got approved, it'll be set up and you can just turn it on. But this is where you invite your community to pay you money every month. And I don't know that many people using it. It's usually like bigger names, like big name people that I've seen do it. But I haven't heard them talk much about utilizing spaces for their private communities.
I think it's great. I think it'll be good to see what people do with it. From what you're saying there, potentially a little bit like we said with ticketed spaces, is it one of these things where there's so few people that have got it that we're going to hear that it's a thing, but then we're never going to see it because not that many people actually have access to it, and therefore it kind of doesn't get enough momentum behind it to really get going? Or is it something that people could be creative with and actually have a go with, and we might see a bit more on the platform? I think only time's going to tell, really.
I agree 100%. Next up, a tweet, and you can follow along in the nest if you're here live with us, if you're listening to the replay, or if you're listening to the podcast version. We always make sure it's in the show notes as well. But Legion had a tweet that went out also this week, letting us know that Twitter Spaces had rolled out new emojis to all Android users. Those of us on iOS, we have to wait. It says following soon. And you know what? Looking live here, look at all the people doing the 100 emojis. I'm assuming they're Android people. Let me see if Suze, I have that 100 back. So interesting how this tweet says iOS to follow soon. Maybe follow soon means now. Look, we're all doing it.
For the podcast, I've taken a screenshot, which I will tweet out and then add into the show notes. There is a shower of 100s in the All Things Audio space right now. I'm loving it.
This is great.
Yes, Madalyn, I noticed yesterday while I was doing my holding spaces with Ray that the 100% was back. And I love it. Look at it. Look at them all. Everybody's pushing their 100%.
It's blowing up right now. I love it.
And the thing is, it was an emoji that we all loved, and and it was taken from us, and now it is back. And I think the fact that everybody's using it right now really is just showing that it's one of those that we really connect with, and that really says what we think and what we mean. And I think that's the beauty of these emojis, is that the palette has to be right for the listeners to be able to share what they're thinking and feeling about what's being said. That's the whole use of them, isn't it? And I think people have really connected with the 100%. So it's really great to see it back. It has absolutely, it's back here on iOS and back on Android. So yeah, it seems, Madalyn, as though that coming soon was sooner than you even imagined.
Absolutely. I'm very happy because, this has been the first time I've been back on Spaces in several days. So it seems like it's rolled out to everyone. Here's what's so interesting. I love that they have not only a thumbs up, but a thumbs down.
Yeah, I see it.
Do you think people are going to use that? I bet that's going to be something people are not going to be afraid to do. If they're hearing something, they don't like it, doesn't have to be a negative thing. It's just letting the host know, like, hey, this is not resonating with me. Do you think people will use it? I think they will.
I think it's quite It's quite a gentle negative emoji. Let's put it that way, isn't it?
Right. That's how I feel, for sure.
You know, thumbs up, yeah, this is great. Thumbs down, not so good. I'm not seeing it as completely negative. I think it's right that they do have one in there that is less positive than the others. I'm loving the fact that I've now got access to 10 emojis. I don't think I've ever had a palette of 10 before. I think I've had 5 different ones, but I've now got, crying or laughing, shock, crying with tears, a heart, the 100%, the clapping hands, the fist, the thumb up, thumb down, and the wave. And it's quite a nice palette, as I say, to sort of be able to be part of the conversation without having to take the mic. And that's absolutely what they're there for. And as I say, I think they needed to give that wider range just to make them as useful as they could possibly be. So I'm really pleased to see 100 back. I'm pleased to see a wider range of them. I would still really like to be able to customize them for my space, but still, I think this is a great step forward and a change that is good.
I agree 100%. I love seeing all the interactivity. I think people are excited to have that 100 back. It definitely blew up once we started talking about it. And it's great to see more choice. I think that's the bottom line. There's more choice here. So I'm very excited this is now available for everyone. If you are in Spaces and you're not seeing this, I would go download the newest version of either iOS or Android, whichever type of phone you have. You probably just need the most current version of the app to be able to see it. Next up, super exciting stuff to share. I got these next several tweets coming from Andrew at Spaces Dashboard. Some really interesting tweets. So first off, he had shared a tweet from, I think it was last week. CNN did their own Twitter space, very high profile. It was Twitter space for CNN, joined by the New York Times. You know, we've talked about in the past, like, are we going to see more big brands using spaces? Are we going to see high profile users? And we weren't really seeing it for some time, right? But I go and look at this replay for CNN, 176,000 listens. I was blown away. And it was hosted by one of their really popular news anchors, and they had several writers from the New York Times. Plus, it wasn't just these high-profile accounts, the news anchor's own account, these writers' own accounts. It was the New York Times profile as well, and the CNN's profile. You had a lot of big brands on here and big names. I think that really helps with people knowing about it, wouldn't you think? Like, it's going to show up in so many different feeds.
Yeah. I mean, we've spoken about this before, about how, you know, certainly those accounts that have got the mic, it then feeds out to their followers. So if they're accounts that have got a large following, then it's going to be seen by more people. Now, we absolutely know there's a discoverability issue with Spaces. So when it comes to a high-profile brand using Twitter Spaces, obviously that brand generally has a fair few followers. And they also often have more than one account that's got a fair few followers. So really the strategy and the tactic that I'm seeing is to get as many of those accounts with the mic so that they then appear on the bar, with all the different account logos, which looks great and shows that those people are alive and in that space, but is also hopefully generating a little bit more interest and giving a little bit more leverage to the discoverability, because the algorithm's then kind of feeding out that these accounts are active in a space at the moment, and therefore chucking that out to their followers. So, it's great to see. I mean, what a number, 176,000 listens. Incredible.
It is incredible. I was so impressed when I saw this. And I think we're seeing this trend now where with bigger brands utilizing this just by going to spacesdashboard.com and looking at all the easy ways to access the different spaces, we're seeing bigger brands on there. So I think this is exciting news, and it just really shows how much Spaces is growing. And the next tweet that's also from Andrew at Spaces Dashboard are some really mind-blowing stats for the month of September. He did this great graphic in the tweet that just shows these incredible numbers. 1.2 million spaces were created just for the month of September. 72 million live participants. That does not include replay. That's just live participants for 1 month and 1.7 million hours of audio. My mind is blown. And that's just to know that's for 1 month.
Yeah, it's really encouraging. I mean, I've had a few conversations this week in different places. I've started doing a LinkedIn audio event. I did it last week. I did it this week. I think it's too early to call it a regular thing, but potentially it will be. But, we're kind of hearing over there from creators who are getting quite disillusioned and are saying, I'm doing this every single week. Nobody's dropping by. No matter how hard I try, I can't beat the algorithm, and they're not giving priority to my audio-driven messages and posts. And that's both true, really. I'm hearing that from creators here on Spaces and over on LinkedIn. So it's quite encouraging to hear that people are still creating spaces. There are still millions of live participants there. And that it is probably a long game, just like podcasting is. And we are up against the algorithm every turn. So it's hard work trying to push through that. But stuff like this is really encouraging from a creator perspective to say, there are people out there listening and taking part. And it's a commitment, but it's one that's probably worth it if you're in it for the long game.
Absolutely, 100%. I put some tweets in the nest of just the excitement of the new 100 emoji and your screenshot. I just had to show that off. It was just too exciting.
I don't think it really captured the absolute flurry of 100s that appeared on my screen, to be honest, because I think once I'd taken it, they all kept coming. Honestly, podcast listeners, it was incredible to be part of. Seeing all these 100s appearing on my screen, it was great. Thank you, listeners.
Next up, another tweet from Andrew at Spaces Dashboard. And this is just a good reminder tweet. We are not being paid by Andrew to talk about Spaces Dashboard. We talk about it because it is a great free site for Spaces discoverability. Just go to spacesdashboard.com. And we've mentioned this in the past that if you're like us, you host, you co-host, or even if you speak in other people's spaces, you also, not only do you want to use it to discover other rooms, but if you're actively speaking, hosting, and doing all that, go over to Spaces Dashboard and go to My Spaces. You'll see at the top, not like MySpace, the old social media platform, but you'll see My Spaces. You go there and you'll see all of your stuff on one page, which is pretty amazing to go see all your past and all of your scheduled upcoming rooms. So just wanted to throw that out there. Andrew has been posting so many great tweets of so much awesome information with Twitter Spaces. I just want to give him a nice little shout out and just a reminder to everyone. If you've not taken time to go over there, I highly recommend you do.
Absolutely. We definitely love Spaces Dashboard. This next one that I found, Madalyn, just kind of caught my eye. It's on social media today. It is the headline is WhatsApp launches call links to better facilitate group audio and video chats. Now, we had discussions about this late last year, earlier this year, around Meta, around Facebook. They totally stepped out of the podcast game. They said, no, we're not doing audio. We're definitely having, we're not going to do the podcast stuff that we thought we were going to do. I remember we were talking that perhaps we might see social audio ability over on Facebook in groups, maybe. That would be a great place for it to be. No, they pulled the rug on all of it, and we've heard nothing more from them since. Now, WhatsApp is obviously Meta, and here they are with this call links feature. Now, it's not social audio. I get that it's not, but it still sounds rather similar. So the idea of this is that you can share a link and invite others to join a group chat within the WhatsApp app. And that can be a video chat or an audio chat. And I think you can have up to kind of 32 people, it says in this article here, join that. So it's not social audio. It's not like hundreds of people all being on the platform, but it kind of does still have echoes of what we're doing here. They're talking about it having like its own calls tab within the WhatsApp app. And it actually says a paragraph here that leapt out of me. It could be an easy way to help enhance community connection and facilitate engagement, while brands could use the option to better connect with influencers and advocates in a more direct, intimate way. Now that does sound like social audio.
Let me mention these two articles. They both come from Rachel over at Bad Redhead Media. She's always posting really interesting articles about social media. This first one is what is social audio and why should I be using it? And this is really some great tips on why you should use social audio and how to use it in your marketing. I know a lot of this stuff is just more for beginners, but for those of us doing this a while, still some good tips in here. So benefits of social audio, less competition. When I think back, Suze, to like the early days of blogging, the early days of podcasts, same thing, right? It was less competition and you stood out more. I started podcasting in 2013. Well, in 2013, there weren't too many other people doing it. So what a great way to stand out. And I started blogging in 2000. Well, most people in 2000 have never even heard the term blog yet. It was not a mainstream term at the time. So being an early adopter, having less competition is never a bad thing. So I feel like we're still early days of social audio. Wouldn't you agree? It's still early days?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is where some of us that were involved in the beta testing, and this is kind of similar with the LinkedIn thing, there are people over there that were involved in the beta and they're still trying, hard and creating the content every week, but then they're not getting anything back from it yet. I still think there is value in adopting this stuff and being an early adopter. And getting on top of it early, getting on top of it now while it's not saturated, because I really don't see it's going to go anywhere. And to be honest, I think having the skills of being able to host and facilitate a live audio space, even if it did go somewhere, that is still valuable to you. So I feel like it's still worth continuing to do that. Obviously, we've been doing this for over a year now. I mean, we're nearly going to come up to the point where we're going to say 2 years, which is just incredible. But we know that we started it extremely early on in the journey of Twitter Spaces. And, we're still talking generally to people who even know what Spaces are. Like, there are still people out there who don't know what social audio is, who don't realise that you can jump into one of these spaces, who don't know what Clubhouse is and have never tried it out. So it's really important, I think, on those days when we think, oh my goodness, I'm doing this thing again, and is anyone going to turn up and is it really worth it? Well, it is worth it, because even if one person turns up and listens to what you've got to say, that's one person who you wouldn't have reached before. You're doing this on a new platform in a different place, and I just think it is worth it to build your own skill set up and also to understand the platform more, because I really don't believe it is going anywhere.
I agree 100%. And since jumping into Twitter Spaces, I've been doing this it's going to be 2 years at the start of the next year. Like, we're just a few months away from a new year. And so almost 2 years I've been just all in on Twitter Spaces. And one of the things that this article points out are things I've noticed for my own brand, my own Twitter profile, which is increased credibility, expanding the reach, increasing engagement. I've gotten way more followers. If it wasn't for Twitter Spaces this past almost 2 years, I would not be at 100,000 followers by now. It would have taken me a little bit longer, for sure. I definitely saw a huge increase in my follower account just by hosting spaces and jumping into other people's spaces. So, and another thing this article mentions, less ad saturation. Let's face it, ads are everywhere in social media, but they haven't gotten to social audio yet, which is, I'm really happy about that, Suze. I'm sure you are too.
Yeah, that's the thing. I remember us talking about, could ads appear on the Fleets bar for Spaces way back when, before it became the Space Bar, and the kind of idea that there's sort of that real prime real estate being at the top bar of the Spaces feed, having the top bar of the Twitter feed, having that Spaces bar up there. That would be a great place for visual advertising. It would also not be completely out of the question that Twitter might consider allowing you to put some kind of pre-roll advertising before your space starts, or, all those different things that we hear with podcasting would totally be available to Spaces. I'm really glad they're not at the moment. Obviously, there are ways that hosts themselves can monetize the Spaces depending on, the audience that they've got, the numbers that they're seeing, those kind of things. It's similar to podcasting in that respect, I guess. But in terms of sort of finding a sponsor, potentially, that's what we've seen before. Those kind of branded spaces where people are dropping branded messaging while they're hosting their space. That's been happening as well. But in terms of, the amount of ads, when you think about how often you might see an ad in the feed, certainly in audio terms at the moment, there's nothing that is intrusive here at the moment.
I'm sure it will come at some point.
I think it probably will, yeah.
But until then, we can really enjoy that there's not much of advertising standing in the way between you and your message and social audio. So again, these are just some great benefits to jumping into social audio. And then when it talked about how to use social audio for marketing, the things that really stood out to me in this article was partnering with influencers and experts. And that is so smart. I had the idea for this room. I talk about just the latest social audio. And what did I do? I partnered with you, Suze. You're like the expert when it comes to audio. I mean, you are truly all things audio. This is your thing. You know your stuff. And I knew that you would be the perfect person for me to partner up with on this. And this has just been such a great experience for both of us and building this great community that had we not ventured into hosting this each week, we wouldn't be having these great conversations with so many amazing people here week in and week out. So yeah, I think it's so important to partner with somebody, whether it's just an influencer, an expert, or just a colleague. It doesn't have to be an expert. But that was definitely my motivation, was going to you. Like if you had said we're not able to, you were too busy, I don't even know if I would have done this with anybody else. I felt like you were like the expert that would be perfect for me to do this with.
Oh, that's so kind of you. I mean, to be honest, I think, I came on the Twitter Smarter chat, I think, previously and had spoken about audio. So I'm guessing that's kind of where you gleaned my knowledge, that I had knowledge of it all from. But, I think certainly from what this article's saying, if you can partner with someone that's influential in the space that you're going to be talking about, then obviously they're going to have the audience that will be interested in your content. And, that's really going to help you because they're going to want to jump in and listen to you. I get the question, which social audio platform should I be on? I can't be on all of them or, streaming. Well, you can be on all of them. And Michael is most certainly the king of being able to stream out to as many as you would like. But I think my answer to that question generally is that you go onto the platform where your audience is. It dials right back to that digital marketing 101, where you need to understand your audience, find out where they are, and that's where you want to, I was going to say set up camp, but of course being Big Tent, that takes on different meaning for me at the moment. So, but that's where you want to be. You want to be where they are. And so it is about understanding your audience, as with any content creation that you really want to resonate with people. And, once you understand that audience, if you can find someone that you can work with that can tenfold that audience for you, then absolutely ask the question as to whether or not they're up for doing it with you.
It never hurts to ask. I'm just a big when it comes to stuff like that. If you don't ask, it'll always be a no. So you might as well ask. And another thing this article mentioned when it comes to using social audio for your marketing is be consistent. We know that's incredibly important. If we were not doing this every single week, it'd be hard for people to remember to come to this. And then we would not see the kind of results we get out of it like we currently do. So consistency is so incredibly important. If you're going to start hosting your own room, have a regular schedule for doing it. So I just really thought this article was just really well written, had some great ideas and thoughts. The other article that Rachel from Bad Redhead Media shared, because she's an author, this particular article was geared a little bit more towards authors, but there's still a lot of great tips and ideas in here that you can get a lot of takeaways. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just for that one industry. The article is using social audio to connect with your readers. But when I'm reading through this article, it's saying, like, what is social audio good for? And it's saying things, book events, ongoing series, things that authors do, event extensions, community building. But really, whatever industry you're in, you could really apply to utilizing social audio. And then they had this little section in the article about 5 best practices. And I'm sure you and I could talk for hours about best practices for social audio, for podcasting, for anything related to audio. But this article talked about get to know the social audio landscape, meaning like get to know the different platforms and find what works best for you. You and I love Spaces, of course, but there's other platforms out there. And you might find, we're hearing more and more about LinkedIn audio. And if you're a huge fan of LinkedIn, you're on there a lot, you have way more followers, you built a community over there, then that might be something that's well suited for you. So it definitely pays to get to, like you and I, we've tried them all. Every time a new social audio platform comes on, we're always quick to jump on it to see, like, is this something I'm interested in using? And I know when Spotify, first launched their, what was it, Green Room? Wasn't that the name of the Green Room? That we were like, oh, this is interesting. I just remember the audio quality being amazing. And for a while, I was thinking, I might actually use this for a little bit, just because it had such good audio quality at the time. But the more time I spent on it, the less I liked the platform for all the other reasons, minus the quality. It just didn't feel like a good fit. But you don't know until you try it, right? Like you got to go spend time in it.
Yeah, I think I found this this article particularly interesting. I suppose having come from the Publishers Podcast Summit, I've literally been talking to publishers all day. And so this kind of really resonated with me in terms of hearing how some of those broadcasters, publishers, news publishers really have been using social audio. And they were talking today about how, they have their platforms that they publish on, where certainly if they're journalists, this is the straight down the line, non-biased, unopinionated news that they're putting out there. And actually what something like social audio or a podcast allows them to do is be human. It allows the human side and the story about the story to come out, which is quite often what people are really interested in. And I think, again, that can go for, we're talking about publishing, as you say, in this particular article, but it can work across the board. I remember way back when speaking to a lady on Spaces who was a wine buyer, and we were talking about how Spaces could, be used for her to speak about the story behind the wines and the story behind the people that she's buying the wine from and how they're making them and all of that. That storytelling element that brings that human idea, that absolutely brings someone as a person, the person behind everything. That's what social audio is good for. It's authentic and it's real.
And a couple other things in this article talking about identifying your goals and your audience, which is so important. Just like when we started this, what was our goal for this conversation? What was it we decided, like, let's share the latest social audio news each week. That's it. We keep it very simple, and we stuck to that, and for a very specific audience, those of you that want to stay in the know with social audio. And many of you are social audio experts as well. And we love it when you come on and chat with us when we are ready for the mic request and doing some Q&A or just sharing your thoughts and ideas. We love getting that diverse conversation, hearing other voices. Also, this article talks about partnering, like we already talked about with the other article. And also super important, scheduling and promoting these is whatever industry you're in. If you're using Spaces, you're hosting, schedule these out and then talk about it, tweet it, post it on other social media platforms, put in your blog, put in your newsletter. You got to get the word out. And then my favorite bullet point in all of these was be authentic. And that's so incredibly important. We know with audio, authenticity really comes through. And I love how in this article it says, don't rehearse. Just ask questions and be in the moment. I just love that. So it's such an interesting article. And, it's so interesting when you see something like this go, oh, this is for authors and readers. This doesn't apply to me. I don't call myself an author. I've written stuff. I don't think of myself as an author, but there's still a lot of good takeaways when you find articles like this. I just felt it was worth sharing with all of you today.
Yeah, I think so too. Andrew, I can see you have the mic. Do you have some social audio gold for us this week?
Hi, you two. Great show as always. I was just picking up. I was just looking at the dashboard and picking up at what Madalyn was talking about in regards to the big sites coming on board onto Twitter Spaces and how it's still early. I'm just looking at the upcoming spaces at the moment. We have tomorrow the New York Times with 54 million followers coming on. They're doing a space called Trump's Shadow over the midterms. In 4 hours' time, we have the NFL. They're running Pretenders, Contenders, Let's Talk Week 5. They have 31 million followers. And third, we have YouTube creators. So let's just think about that. YouTube creators with 6.6 million followers, they're using Twitter Spaces to connect with their creators. And I just think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, we've spoken about that kind of partnership before, haven't we? About how it feels strange that they would come over here to speak to people, but equally it's the ease with which you can then connect with people that are going to be watching the content, I guess.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Their title is, they're doing a whole thing on creators for climate action, creators in conversation. And that is exactly what Twitter Spaces is about. And I could keep going on, just scrolling and scrolling. All of the big brands are coming. And I think, if we were to fast forward 18 months, I don't think there'll be a news agency that hasn't got a Twitter Spaces.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think as well, YouTube have obviously, again, this harks back to that audience piece that I was talking about earlier. YouTube are obviously aware or believe that their creator audience is right here on Twitter. And so that's why they're going to use Twitter as the platform to get the message out. But yeah, I'm trying to work out why they wouldn't use their own platform to do that, Andrew. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I suppose it allows them to reach another audience who may not have their YouTube channel or their YouTube short sorted, and it may give them an opportunity to start promoting that. And obviously they've got a rev share now with the YouTube shorts, which I think will be very interesting. And I think they're going after trying to really tap into that quick, bite-sized vertical video stuff. So having the ability to let the Twitter audience know about that, I think would be very interesting for them. That may well be part of their premise. But it's not just from YouTube side. We've also got likes of Google. Google Dev are now running Twitter Spaces to connect with their dev community. Pretty much what Twitter did with Daniele and how we all got involved with it. They're replicating that. They're seeing that this works because, that the issue of being authentic, it almost comes to just be yourself. That is the authentic element. Be yourself, be the brand that comes on, connects with your audience, open for questions, open for issues, address them all. People really, really respond to that. And we all want that. We just want to have honest conversations. And I think Twitter Spaces, for me, is the number one place where that's happening at the moment. The other big news, of course, floating about is Elon being back in the mix. Can you imagine, let's just paint this picture, it all goes through and he hosts his very first space. Can you imagine what numbers that would get?
Oh, that would be insane. I'm sure it would just be crazy. Because when he was first starting this whole I'm going to buy Twitter thing months ago, his Twitter went crazy. And he would do polls, and the number of people participating in his Twitter polls were, I'd never seen these kind of numbers before for everything he was doing. So yeah, if he hosted a space, which I'm sure he will, it'll probably crash Twitter.
Well, they keep saying they can handle unlimited listeners, and this would certainly push it to the limits. But what a great advertisement it would be to brands all over the world if he suddenly jumped on board and held spaces, especially with the politicals coming up and all of the issues happening in America. Suddenly all the political parties would probably see this as another way to connect with their voters, swing voters. It could be a very interesting mix and very timely.
And Jolynn's here. Hi, Jolynn.
Hi, ladies. How are y'all today?
Doing great. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I've really enjoyed listening to y'all. I have a background in radio and television broadcast. Did that for a while, then became a mom, got out of the scene for 15 years, and then got connected with somebody and they're like, hey, audio? Help me do this thing called Twitter Spaces. I said, what? Audio, yes, I'm pretty Twitter illiterate. I always said I don't tweet. I'm not a twit. I've had to eat words lately because I've been tweeting. So we were able to use Twitter Spaces to help this friend of mine come to a decision. Does she want to start a podcast? And in the end, we did, I think, Twitter Spaces for about a month. We didn't get a lot of traction just because, it's at a specific time and your community has to have that time available, and hers just simply didn't. But she was confident with it enough that she has a podcast. She's been doing it, I think, for almost 3 months now, and she's getting good numbers. But we started that idea and fleshed it out in Twitter Spaces.
That's awesome.
That's what I love to hear. I love to hear, it's a good testing ground for stuff like that. It's a great place to come, try out some different content, try out the conversations, see if they're going to work. And it does cost. It costs time and, that and commitment and effort, but it gives you almost a whiteboard, if you like, to have a play with some things and have some fun. Like, podcasting is meant to be fun, people. Who knew it? And so this is just like that whiteboard that you can experiment with stuff, try stuff out. And if you find the thing that flies, then that, totally take that, run with it and make it your space, your podcast, your audio content, your blogs, your website, whatever it might be. That's what I think, it really does give an open forum for that and instant feedback from people. You can actually ask people in the space immediately. And it's a great way to use the space and to use that interaction and connection with people. So it's great to hear that that went so well.
Thank you to all of our speakers who came on and shared so much great stuff. And we're available in all of your favorite podcast apps. We're out there, All Things Audio. You can also go to allthingsaudiopodcast.com as well.
You certainly can. And you can catch us here on Twitter and use the hashtag AllThingsAudio, and we'll pick that up throughout the week. So that's it for this week. But thank you so much to everyone that's been here in the space with us and those of you listening. And we'll catch up with you next week.
Bye, everybody.